brand. I mean, every aspect of this big system has been designed. And you know, that, as I say, I think is what we aspire to do, but don't often get the opportunity to do.
So, as the CEO of Ideo, how do you promote a culture of innovation?
I mean, the thing that I try and do inside our own culture is focus on a set of things that I think are really important. One is that innovation is a team sport. That we may often remember the individuals, and we point at the Steve Jobs and the Edisons and the Akio Moritas and the Brunels, but even those people who are towering individuals and extremely smart rely on huge teams to enable them. For most of us kind of mere mortals, design and innovation is done collaboratively if it's going to be done to a high standard. And so, you know, I try and encourage a culture. I don't have to try and encourage it; it's naturally part of our culture idea, which is that people work together very well in various ways. And we have this. There's this very simple concept in design which is called the project, and I'm sure you do some project-based stuff here at Menlo. Most education is not project-based, but the project acts as this vehicle to bring a group of people together, and it's a really good vehicle to bring a group of people together, and giving them something to collaborate around. So that's really important. And the second thing that's really important in an innovation culture is optimism. Now that doesn't mean, I think it's very important to say, optimism doesn't mean you're always happy. There's a sort of reputation we have in the rest of the world, here, California, you know, Silicon Valley. We thought of these sort of hippy-dippy, you know, happy-go-lucky, everything's cool sort of people, which, you know, you'll agree is to some degree true, right? We are, but you know, optimism is different. Optimism is about always having faith that you're going to get to a better solution. You can be optimistic and critical at the same time. So there's sort of an interesting balance, but optimism is really important. A third thing that's really important is the willingness to experiment and try new ideas without necessarily knowing what the answer is going to be. And I think this is a really important skill or trait that we need to have, more of than ever before, because the problems that we're facing in the world are so much more complex and so much more difficult. Things like climate change and obesity and some of the big health issues and poverty issues that are perhaps the biggest challenges we face as societies today, they're very, very hard to understand. And so without a willingness to experiment, without a willingness to kind of engage on the kind of journey of creativity and innovation, without knowing what the answer is going to be, we haven't got much chance of discovering the big ideas. And so and it's something that I think is often missing in business, for instance, is a willingness to experiment. There's a sort of a need to know the answer before you ask the question, and I don't know whether you ever feel that in your environment, but you know, it may make you feel safe to know the answer before you ask the question, but you don't ever get to anything very surprising if you already know the answer. So that sort of comfort with going on a journey without knowing kind of quite where you're going to go to is important.
Okay. So, what is the best design product you've ever seen, and why?
That's another fair question to ask. You know, in some ways, some of the things that I love the most are the things that are almost invisible to us, that sort of just do their job so well, but perhaps add a sort of some small amount of kind of delight to the process. So you know, a sort of a beautifully designed door handle, for instance, that you may not 99 times out of 100 you may not even realize and even notice you've used it, and then just every so often you'll kind of grab hold of it and think, this feels good, this feels nice, and you know, I'm enjoying opening this door. Now I know that sounds nuts, but I think that's what really well designed products actually do for you. So they are the things, perhaps the things that are sort of almost, they're just sort of there in our lives. So a well-designed water bottle, say a beautifully designed door handle, or something, a great, a well-designed toothbrush. I mean, I love those kinds of things because they're sort of, they make my life just a little bit better and a little bit more enjoyable, and that's, I love that.
Okay. At Ideo, how do you decide which ideas are worth pursuing? Like, where do you draw the line between creative and crazy?
Oh, that's actually all ideas that if you want to put them out in the world and have them be have impact, I mean, so if you want to have somebody make the product that you designed, or print the poster or the book that you designed, or whatever, then they have to have this balance of things, and this is particularly true in the world of kind of products and services. They can't. And the balance that one's always striving for is a balance between what I think of as how desirable this thing is, how much we want it, need it, which is sort of to some degree where the kind of craziness can come, right? So how wonderful it might be to have this thing has to be balanced by how technically feasible it is to make the thing. Many of the things that we design have to be made in the millions, and so there are a lot of constraints to how you can do that. There are certain materials and processes and amounts of money one can afford to spend on making stuff. And then thirdly, whoever's making that thing and putting it out in the world, it has to be sustainable for them. And in most cases, that means it has to be a viable business. Somebody has to be able to make it for less money than they can sell it for, or they have to be able to market it, or they have to be able to ship it around the world, all those kinds of things. So the balance of those three things ends up, and how well you manage that balance determines the impact you have with whatever you've designed. And that ends up sort of determining what's crazy and what's not crazy. Right? I mean, the crazy stuff is the stuff that's people will love but you can't make, or you can make but nobody wants. Right? I mean, and so that sort of that kind of sort of draws a line. Now, the real innovation comes in figuring out how to do those three things in new ways, so that you can create things that are more desirable than anybody's seen before, more feasible, and make a better business than anybody's seen before. That's where the real breakthroughs happen. But I think the tension of those three things helps determine what's crazy and what's not crazy.
Okay. So Ideo has moved from designing objects to designing other things like spaces and experiences. What caused that change?
I think probably one thing was a sort of a catalyst, and then there was a bigger kind of trend that was driving it. The catalyst was 2001. You guys may or may not remember, we had a little bit of we had the previous recession back then to the one that we've just been going through, which actually for many of us in Silicon Valley was a tougher one than the one that we've just been through, because it was the dot-com crash when all the technology companies suddenly ran out of money, or disappeared in many cases. They just went out of business. And our work at the time was largely for technology companies, tech startups and tech companies, and a lot of them disappeared overnight, and that was quite challenging from a business perspective. And so that was a catalyst for having us think about how can we apply what we know and what we do to a broader range of things. In fact, we've been working on designing services and what, as you say, experiences, things that connect brands and sort of retail and services and products together for quite a while before that. But we just hadn't realised that had to become a major part, if not the major part of our business. And so those two kind of that trend of realising that that design was applicable to this broader set of things, plus the recession, got us serious about this new. And now, our work is, I don't know what percentage of it is product design, but it's under 30 or 40%, I would say.
Okay. How does design thinking influence the way you structure Ideo as a business?
One way it affects it quite literally is I don't try and structure Ideo as a business. As structure in the traditional sense of the sort of the organizational chart, which shows people in places and lines that connect them together. It's never really made very much sense at Ideo. We don't really have those, and the reason we don't have them is because we're sort of constantly evolving, and so the structure is it's more like some sort of living